In today's video, we're going to check out some upgrades from Injora for the Micro Bee. We're going to go ahead and install them on my eventual mod car here. Alright, so I'm not going to make you guys watch me install everything, but we're going to go ahead and we'll take a look at the parts just so you can see what they look like. So here is one of the rear hubs right here, and the machine work looks pretty good. Here is one of the front spindles or hubs. Here is one of the front, I think this is the caster block. I might be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong what this part is called, because I keep forgetting. Same deal though, contrast cut black, looks good. Machining feels nice, there's no rough edges or anything. We're gonna be doing the front shock tower. Now here there is a little bit of a difference. You'll see that we have 3 upper shock tower holes there where we can mount the top of our shock, which is cool. Carbon fiber looks cool, obviously, and yeah, it feels good. It's a nice feeling little part. And then lastly, we're gonna do the rear shock tower here, which is a nice feeling. Same 3 holes up top, decent, definitely good quality machining here. It was cut well, no sharp edges or anything like that. And it has this like aluminum front piece here, which I found interesting. And all of the required hardware that they will need. If I know Injora too, I bet we have a couple extra screws in here and a couple extra pieces just in case. All right, so we got our parts put on now. They look really cool. Front shock tower looks awesome. I really like too that you get these pillow balls here that have a hex in them, so you can actually unscrew them versus the old ones where you had to use like a wrench. The only area where I have concern is right here where this top screw and this bottom screw go in. So I wish they would have put like a collar or some kind of like washer in there that would sort of keep them from tightening down to where this guy doesn't want to move. So you have to have them kind of loose. So that's, I mean, you're going to need thread lock anywhere that you're screwing into aluminum, but this part here especially is going to need some thread lock because you're going to have to adjust them loosely and very precisely in order not to have too much play or any binding. Another area where I had kind of a minor concern is on these sleeves up top where you have replaced your pillow balls. It's just a little bit tight, so I hit it with just like the tiniest bit of sandpaper inside of the top of the shocks, and that seemed to fix it. But overall, the parts are pretty cool. I also noticed that back here you have 2 mounting holes where you used to have 1 for this upper link. I'll have to look into what that does because I'm actually not sure, but I put it in the top because that seemed closest to where it was from the factory. Anyway, so I'm not expecting a ton of difference, like I said before. So we'll have to compare the weight of this one versus the stock one, since aluminum is going to be heavier than that plastic. The weight is in good places, like right here in the hubs where you're right over the wheels, so it may help with traction. We'll have to see. It may even change the handling just a little bit, but I'm not expecting a huge difference when we run it. We're still going to run it and see if there is anything, but I'll let you guys know if there's a big difference or not. So I didn't get the shocks or the links. I think I want to go with the Losi shocks or maybe the Nex shocks. I just don't know if Injora is going to make a shock that I want to put on something like the Micro Bee. I love their shocks on crawlers, but this is going to be a little bit different. And as far as the links go, I just can't find them anywhere. They're out of stock literally everywhere. So those will be the next upgrades to go on here, as well as maybe a different top plate for this one in particular, because if this one is going to be the mod car, it's going to need to be brushless, and we're going to need to mount real electronics up here. So that'll probably be what happens with this one next. Anyway, before we go run it, let's go ahead and we will compare the weight of this one versus a stock Micro Bee. All right, so our modified Micro Bee is weighing 129 grams. Stock Micro Bee weighs 125 grams, so not a huge weight gain, just 4 grams. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and we'll start off with the modified Micro Bee. This one, I haven't done as much tuning on the chassis. I haven't done anything with the slop, and it could potentially have some binding somewhere. It's pretty much just fresh out of the box with the Injora parts on it. So it doesn't have the attention paid to it like my box stock car does. And it's also, I mean, it's not really run in, so things could be sticky. Either way though, I can tell you immediately that as far as jumps go, it definitely wants to stay on the ground. It's like there's a magnet pulling it down. I think they call that gravity, and then the weight, you know, obviously increases that force. So you can definitely tell that is a factor. It feels planted. It doesn't feel like it wants to roll. Suspension geometry feels fine. It feels like I might want to do some stuff with it. But that may also just be because it's not set up at all. I don't feel like we're losing any like speed or torque on this guy. Let's see, we'll take it to the straight. Yeah, no, it's got all the zip of a Micro B, so we didn't lose anything there. Just a little bit heavier, a little bit more planted, maybe a little bit more front traction. Definitely some rear traction. That shock tower is probably the heaviest piece with the aluminum bottom on the rear shock tower. So, okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll grab my box stock Micro B and we'll see if I'm correct about feeling the weight difference here. All right, now we'll hit some quick laps with the stock one. You can tell right away that it is definitely the more nimble vehicle. Now, this could be because it's lighter, but it could also be because it's a little bit more loosey-goosey. It's been run more, so all the parts are nicely broken and stuff like that. It's definitely lighter in the turns, definitely lighter in the air. So there's definitely a difference in feel between the two. And the aluminum parts definitely have something to do with both the air feel and the turning feel. Now, one thing that we'll want to keep in mind is that this is a very high traction surface here. On a lower traction surface, those aluminum parts really might come through and help with things like traction. And yeah, and I did have an issue, by the way, with one of the Injora parts that I'll share with you guys when we get back to the table. Yeah, overall, honestly, I think I like the stock one better. I think I need to spend some time with the mod car and get it set up to make a more fair assessment. All right, it's time for a verdict. We're going to start off by talking about the comparison really quick. The comparison between the two probably shouldn't be taken too seriously because I am way more used to this Micro B than I am this Micro B. Like the actual chassis, this one in particular has been set up further. If you watched my other video about box stock setup, we did all sorts of shimming and stuff like that in order to get rid of some slop. This one is tuned to do much better than one fresh out of the box, and so it does. This one here hasn't had any tuning done to it, anything like that, so it doesn't feel as good and I'm not as fast with it, regardless of what parts are on it. This one is just going to need the same kind of treatment that my box stock cars had, and I can guarantee you it'll feel much better. I do need to separate that, like the fact that I just like this buggy better right now, from the actual parts review that we're going to do here. So I'm going to give you guys the good, the bad, and the ugly without thinking too much about like the actual comparison between the two buggies. Okay, so we'll start with the good, reviewing just the parts and what they add to the Micro B here. So for the good, honestly, the additional weight can be beneficial. It's not something that I was used to when we were driving the two, but there was definitely, once I did start getting used to it, there was definitely some advantages. It felt more planted in the corners. It felt more solid. I felt a little bit more confident with it, which was cool. It was quick to come down from jumps, which is technically faster in terms of racing. Like you shouldn't be just going for big air when you're racing. You want to keep those wheels on the ground as much as possible. So in terms of racing, like that's a good thing. And in terms of durability, that'll also be a good thing, especially with these front hubs and spindles here. Now for another good thing, the fit and finish of the parts is really good. Injora gives you a lot of extra screws and stuff like that, which I've always really liked from them. The shock towers are beautiful. They're absolutely awesome. They give you extra mounting holes on there, which is cool. Good for tuning. Extra upper link mounting holes on the back there, which is also really cool. But yeah, no issues with like finish or no issues with like burrs or any kind of like rough surface or anything like that. Everything is manufactured really nicely. Okay, so now for a bad thing, I did have a little bit of binding back here in the back where the hub actually met the A-arm. I had to do a little bit of sanding on my A-arm. There was a little bit of flashing there that I had to get rid of. But once I got rid of that, it was smooth again. But that's just something to know about. And it didn't do that with the stock hubs, just the Injora. So that's why it's getting marked as a bad for the Injora. But yeah, after a little bit of sanding, I got that smoothed out and it was fine back here. But I was noticing that actually was what was making it feel so lazy in the corners, was that I didn't have as reactive of a rear end. And once I finally did get that taken care of, it felt a lot better. Still heavier, but better. Now for the ugly, because this is the worst. This is the worst thing about this entire setup right here, is the way that these front hubs connect to those caster blocks. I hope those are actually called caster blocks. But the way that those connect with the screws, like you can't bottom that screw out or else it binds, like full lock bind. So you have to run them a little bit loose in order to have a nice free front end. The problem with that is I lost 2 screws in that short little bit of time that I was running because not even thread lock could hold them in. So I recently put a bunch of thread lock on those screws and they seem to be holding in just fine. I might upgrade that to super glue. But yeah, bad design there. Honestly, that shoulder screw should be longer in order to like support this. And the stock screws won't work for that at all because they're just too loose. Like there's too much space there. So not a good design there, Injora. Yeah, I really wish they would have included like some collars like they do with their crawlers, or something, a longer screw, something that you can bottom out where it's not going to cause binding, because a lot of people are going to lose these screws up here, and that is kind of unfortunate. That is the ugly. That is the almost don't want to buy this part because of that. Like I might actually go for a different brand up front because of that. So yeah, that's the overall. As far as I'm concerned, I think that if you can work out these screws up front and you can make sure you don't have any binding or anything like that, and you like the weight or the additional durability, then these parts are definitely worth a buy. We got to keep in mind, Injora parts are very cost effective and they're also in stock. So they're not all bad, but I just really hate the design on the front spindle there. I wish that they did a better job with that screw. We can find a way to make that work so it's not a total loss for those. Those are the parts. I think they're pretty good. You're just gonna have to do a little bit of work to make them work really well. But once you do, you'll have a heavier, more durable micro B that feels more planted in the corners and is a little bit more ready for a mod class brushless setup or something crazy where the extra weight would be a benefit. Anyway, you guys, if you like this video, give me a like, and if you like this type of content, you should subscribe, because I'm making RC videos like this every week, sometimes even twice a week. And yeah, it's always a good time around here. Anyway, with that being said, I'm gonna work with this, make it a little bit better, and that's a video. We'll see ya.